Yep. So in the book, just right out of the bat, my
Yeah,
my attention was just grasped and just really gripped me. Was this story you told of a friend of yours who was shot in the line of duty, and he lived, or I want to get that out of the way. I wouldn't be
yeah.
talking about
Right,
it if it
right.
wasn't the case. And so, if you don't mind, can you kind of recall that and how it led to this
Sure.
distinction that you made that I thought was interesting between belief that and belief in?
Yeah, and I actually had that originally at the end of the book, and my editor said, let's move that to the front,
To do
because I was trying
exactly
to make
what it did to me.
I was trying to make a point about something else at the end, and because I realized when it happened, I was working when you work homicide in our agency, you also work OISs. Those are officer involved shootings, and that means that anytime an officer discharges a weapon and hits someone, you have to go out and investigate to make sure that all the protocol was in place beforehand, and if it's not, to document it, to make sure that the right things occur afterwards. And so I get called out one night because this officer had pulled over a drunk driver. Well, he thought it was a drunk driver, and he gets the guy out of the car and realizes this is a parolee, who is a much different character than he thought. That he was drunk, but he knew he had a handful. And the parolee also was carrying a gun, unbeknownst to the officer. And in our state, back in those days, it's a little bit different now, but it used to be that if you were caught with a gun, you do a year. And so this guy knew that just having possession, a parolee with a gun, would put him in jail for a year. And he had just come out of jail.
Hmm.
He was on parole. He didn't want to go back. So he decided, as this officer was getting him out of the car, that if it came down to it and the officer was going to discover this gun on him, he was going to have to kill the officer rather than go back to jail. And of course, that was eventually going to happen if he's going to be arrested for drunk driving. So he really made a decision pretty early, I think, that he was going to kill the officer.
Hmm.
As a matter of fact, as the officer got ready to do what we call an FST, which is a field sobriety test, he told this guy to turn away from him so he could do a pat down search, because he had a suspicion this guy was the kind of guy who would probably be carrying a gun.
Hmm.
And as this driver turned away from the officer, he turned around immediately and pointed the gun at the officer's chest. And so the officer knew that he had kind of been caught off guard. And he didn't have his hand on his gun yet. He didn't have his gun drawn for sure. And this guy's already pointing a gun at him.
Yeah.
Now, I go to these scenes after the fact. And so clearly the guy survives it because he's talking to me about it.
Right.
And I have to kind of assess and go through the shoot scene. And I can see everywhere where the bullets are hitting the ground, where the bullets are hitting the car, where the bullets are hitting everything. And I'm looking at all that, and I'm listening to his story. And he, like me, we know that we wear equipment that'll help us, and we both know we're wearing bulletproof vests. So when we work, they're small Kevlar vests that fit underneath our uniforms, and they're really helpful, of course. And we've seen them stop bullets. We put them on the range on our targets, and we put them downfield, and we'll shoot them up close. We'll shoot them at 10 yards. We'll shoot them at 5 yards, just to see if bullets will penetrate the vest. And we discover pretty quickly they don't. I mean, that actually does its job.
Yeah.
Now, it's going to hurt. It's going
Right.
to push the vest in. It's going to feel like you've been hit with a sledgehammer, but it's not going to penetrate the vest. And so as he stood there facing this suspect who had already had the gun drawn on him, he decided, you know what, I don't have time to do much. He could try to like jump to the side, or he was too far away to do like a takeaway maneuver. So he was just stuck. And he said, I just decided I'm just going to tense my stomach muscles and take the first couple of rounds until I get my gun out and return fire. Which, if you think about it, is a crazy, and this is all happening in a millisecond, right?
Right. It's happening in real time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought when I was standing there, because by this time I was already a Christian, and I remember standing there listening to his story and thinking to myself, man, that defines for me the difference between believing that something is true and believing in something.
Right.
And he moved in that 1 second from one to the other. And what's interesting about that is that all of us want to be able to have a faith, to have that kind of faith, right?
Right.
Belief in, not just believe that. And I think it's belief in that truly saves you, trusting that thing to do for you what you cannot do for yourself. But how do we get there, right? Well, one of the ways I think if he didn't know, if he had not seen the vest stop bullets, he would not have stood still.
Right. Yeah.
So there is a connection between your level of evidential um, certainty and your level of commitment in a time of crisis.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
that happens for a lot of us. And I've heard other philosophers and apologists talk about, this idea that, hey, if you can know something is true at a point of intellectual certainty, and that's different for every person, I get that. But the point is, if you can be certain intellectually that something is true, it will help you in a time of
Right.
crisis when you feel like you want to jettison it,
Mm-hmm.
but you know better because you had, and this is what was happening to him. So I say the same thing for young people, as especially in high school years, is we have to get to a place because someone's going to push that button. Someone's going to do something that's going to shake your potentially could shake your faith. And that's why I think it's so important for us to know that the vest stops bullets,
Yeah.
to see that first. And then when you come to that period of crisis, you're like, hey, I've already been there, done that. I already know this can do the job. I'm just going to be calm and still, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to panic. Thanks so much for watching our video. If it was helpful and useful to you, I'd really appreciate it if you would follow us, subscribe to our channel at the bottom link here in the video, and tell your friends. And please follow us on social media.